Looks like we have Mr. Eliason and Mr. Fowler with us this morning. Welcome, boys.
Thank you. Good morning, Amy. Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning. Good morning, John. Good morning, everyone.
And you know, Cam is a
morning.
Did you notice how disturbed he is? I mean, just so we're on the same page. You know how you hear him like chuckling with kind of a sinister laughter, in the background there when he's making fun of the rest of the country and his beautiful weather all year round.
Oh, come on.
You know what? Trust me, I've spent enough time with Cam. You don't know how disturbed he really is. So, but you know what? There's sometimes that dude's secrets, right? You guys got to keep that under cap. So,
you do.
Always got your back, Cam. Cam's got my back. He's always had my back. So,
buddy.
All right. What are we talking today? We're talking. We're kind of going old school today. We're going to. When I mean old school, is like. Sometimes you just got to strip it down to the absolute basics and look at, really we're going to look at the process, which we all know, and there's some new folks on the call that might not be as familiar with it. But, and you know what, actually, I'm going to try to actually get through this call without coughing once. I made it half a day yesterday, so I think we're good now. But when we look at the process, but before I go, I want to shout out to a couple people actually, because in the last 3 weeks we had 5 folks here. Shelly sold 2 clovers. Thank you. Brian's got 1. Bruce has 1. I don't know if Bruce is with us today. Nick sold 2 clovers, and Mark McCarthy sold 2 clovers. So definitely, if you're not familiar with the clover, we do post the calls on the website. We've got some clover video training stuff on there. Get yourself really acclimated with the clover. It's doing really, really. We're having some good experiences with the clover. So thank you guys for doing that. So we're going to look at the process. The process is, we've got to demonstrate to the merchant somehow how we're going to bring more value to them. It's not always a dollars and cents thing. We understand that, but oftentimes the premise of our conversation, to kind of kick the door open a little bit, it is a dollars and cents conversation. Hey, if I could, would you? If I could put a little more money back into your business. And then what we, and we talked, I think was it 2 weeks ago, we talked about the merchant tune-up sheet. So, I go in, I talk to them about getting them a better deal. I start going through the merchant tune-up sheet. And what I find by going through the merchant tune-up sheet is other opportunities there. Other ways to bring value to them. But one of the most important things that we need to do is just get the statement. Just get the merchant statement, because we really can't construct a program, which you guys know, and I get this. We can't construct a program for them until we see what they're currently on. I mean, we can ask all the questions on the merchant tune-up, and that's a lot of it, but we need to get the statements. And what I'm seeing a lot of is when folks first start, they don't chunk it out. What they do is they try to they think they've got to talk through the whole sale on the first visit with the merchant without looking at the statements. And that's kind of the wrong approach. It's not kind of, it is the wrong approach. And what I always try to do with my newer advisors or my new agents is the only thing I want to sell them on the first visit is giving me that dang merchant statement. So that has to be our focus, is get that merchant statement, go through the merchant tune-up sheet. And let me ask you guys, when we get the statement, we can talk about things to say to get the statement, because we all hear the objections. Why do you need my statement? Well, I want to, I'm not giving it to you, or is there anything on there that can be detrimental to my customers or detrimental to me? I mean, we get all those things. But what is the most important thing to do once you get the statement in your hand? What is the most important way to leave that conversation with the merchant once we have the statement in our hand?
If I can, will you?
If I can, will you? Exactly. We must tie that down right here. The if I can, will you, or if I could, would you? So, and I know a lot of you guys have written a lot of business on the call, so some of this stuff is certainly redundant, and I get it, but we have a lot of new folks on the call too. What are some objections you hear when you ask for their statement? What are some things you hear from the merchant?
Well, if
you ever hear Go ahead, Cam. I'm sorry.
If you haven't paved the way, Chuck, they're just not going to have enough faith in you to give you this financial information.
Right.
And you've got to build rapport from the moment you get in front of the prospect.
Right. You got to start asking questions, right? Start getting into their business.
Yes, absolutely.
What are some of the
friends with?
You got to be making friends, because if they're not comfortable with you, they're not going to give you the statement, and they'll try to get you to quote them a rate. But and let me ask you, Cam, because I know, Cam, you've written a certainly quite a bundle of business. What would you say? What percentage of the merchants that you've actually dealt with and gotten into the statement with, what percentage of them actually understood their merchant statement?
0.
0, yeah. You know, most people really can't even balance a checkbook. I mean, that you know, they can't get their bank statement, balance a checkbook. So when you look at a merchant statement, most of them don't understand it. And oftentimes what you'll see on the merchant statement is what it looks like they're getting, they're not really getting until you kind of dig into the statement. Would you say that's fair to say?
Absolutely, it's fair to say.
Yeah. Yeah, they go, oh yeah, I'm getting 1.25, and you go, well, yeah, 1.25% pass through, or an enhanced recovery kind of billing situation. So, you know, we got to get the statement. So first thing, build rapport, make them feel comfortable, make them understand your intention. You know, them handing that over, if they understand what your intent is to really, you know, structure something for them. We want to have their account for however long they decide to accept credit cards. And then when you do that, if I could, will you? It's what I found is you need to drill them down on a timeline. When I go, let me ask you, I'm going to get these over to my underwriter, and I'm going to really push to get you a great deal. And I'm going to work my underwriter over. He owes me a favor anyway. And let me ask you, when I do that, can we move forward on this? Yes, great. I'm going to fax this into my underwriter. I'll get some numbers probably within the next 45 minutes or so. Why don't we do this? Should we just reconnect, and let's say it's 9 o'clock now. Should we reconnect at 10:30? Timeline them. And then you want to get them into your agent director, and someone here will get you numbers. If your agent director's sick, on a call, helping, you know, whatever, someone else someone here will get you numbers. So, but timeline them. That's extremely important, is always want to timeline them and get that commitment to come back. If you go, hey, I'll get the numbers, and why don't I just give you a call tomorrow and we can set something up, that's going to be too loose. Because what happens when you call them back? What do you think what happens? Oh, I can't. Next week. Oh, why do you come in next week? So what's that old expression, strike while the iron's hot? So if you timeline them, get them to commit to a time today, get in front of them. And what I like to do, if I get them to commit to a time, I don't have to call them. I can just show up for the time. Because if you call a merchant that's waiting on numbers from you, what do you think they're going to ask you when you call them? What do you think
they're going to ask you for the specifics? Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to ask you for the numbers. They're going to try to ditch out on your meeting. So don't set yourself up to have to call them and get on that uncomfortable conversation where they're going, well, just tell me the numbers. I don't want you to come over, just tell me the numbers, because if you just tell them the numbers, what do? They go back
yes,
to
well, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, oh, okay, great. Well, now I know. So everything's got to have a story to it. So, you know, if you pin them down on a time, great, I'll see you at 1 o'clock. And then when you do what you say and you show up at 1 o'clock and you've got numbers, then you can sit down and present those statements to the merchant. If you leave it open-ended and you call them, and let's say you're forced to leave it open-ended. Let's say you can't pin them down. And let's say you call the merchant and go, I got great news, and I want to get with you and show you what I have. And they say to you, well, what are the numbers? Tell me what the savings is. What do you do then? Because you don't want to tell them over the phone, right? Let me ask you, if you were a doctor, or if a doctor had to deliver bad news to you, does the doctor do it or bad news? Does the doctor do it in person or over the phone?
In person.
In person. So the bad news is you got a sick merchant account, you need to be healed and I can heal you. So you don't want to deliver bad news over the phone, right? You want to deliver that face to face, but it's just we put it as in as good news. So what do you say then when they go, well, just tell me what the numbers are? How do we get around that?
There are a number of ways to do that.
Okay. So let's say you were pinned down. You couldn't get it. Just share one that you do. I mean, because I've heard you do it. You do it really well. So what are some things that you do when you couldn't pin them down for a specific time to go over it, and you call them back, and they go, well, just tell me the numbers, Cam.
Well, you and I need to sit down and go over this together, because I want to go over this with you line by line so that you really do understand it. And there's no way in the world to do that unless you and I are sitting face to face.
I'm sure you would agree, wouldn't you? Right?
Exactly.
And then tie it up.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then I always tie it up with the question, hey, look, you know what, there's a lot to you. Remember when you handed your statement over and we looked at it just briefly? I mean, there's a lot of information on there, isn't there? And they go, yeah, there is. And go, you know what I'd love to do is, why don't we get together? I can run through it. I want to go through it line by line. I want to make sure that you understand what I'm doing for you. So why don't we do this? And I'm sure that makes sense, right? And then they go, and you know what, when you take control like that, they go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Great. Well, let me ask you, so is 11 or noon better for you? You know, and I know when I hear that, you know, I hear myself talking right now. I hear it. And I hear God, that sounds so trivial. That's so minute part of the sale. I mean, really, is it that important to? Yes, it is that important. Those fine little points of handling that stuff the right way means a world of difference at the end of your day. So they'll try to trap you into that, giving them the numbers over the phone. They'll try to do that. I like going, look, you know, I want to go through this with you line by line just to make sure that you really understand, because I'm sure you'll want to know what's going on, right? And I always throw those in there just to cinch it down, because they go, well, yeah, of course I do. Great. Why don't we do this? And then I nail them on a time. Does that stuff make sense, guys?
Sure. Yes.
Sure. Yes. Kinda. It kind of does. Okay. Yeah. So make sure you do that. But so you don't have to go through the whole thing. All you got to do on that first visit is we just got to get that merchant statement. And I know when you're new, and you get that first piece of statement in your hand and you're excited and you just want to run out and fax it in to your agent director, and that's exactly what you're supposed to do. But try to do this too. Make sure that we have all the pages. Because what you'll see, a lot of pages on a merchant statement are just kind of fluff. They're just general kind of numbers, like batch numbers. We need the meat and potatoes of the deal, or meat and potatoes, as my grandmother would say. So we want the meat and potatoes. We want to make sure we have every page, because it's a story. I mean, you wouldn't read a book, and if it had 500 pages in the book, you wouldn't expect to just read 400 of them, would you? No, you want to read the whole story. So make sure we get the complete page, and then fax in that the merchant tune-up sheet, because those things are going to dovetail together. What comes on that merchant tune-up sheet might answer some questions that we see on the statement that we're unsure of, and vice versa. When you see the statement, go, why are they getting charged like this? And then you look at the merchant tune-up sheet and go, oh, because here's what they're running. Okay, now it makes sense. So make sure you send that in with the statement. Are there any questions about that? About statements? No? Statements is how we diagnose. We have to diagnose with statements. And look at it, in my mind, I look at it just like going to the doctor. You ever go to the doctor, and what's one of the first things they do? They take your blood pressure, right? They sit you down, they take your blood pressure, and then they ask you some questions. Or the nurse practitioner does, or the nurse or whomever does that when you first get there. They fill out a little questionnaire, and they ask you some questions. They take a couple of vital signs, and then they go, oh, okay, well, the doctor will be in shortly. So that's kind of what you're doing. You're going in, you're asking some questions, you're getting the statements to get the vitals, and then we're going to get with your doctor, and then we're going to determine what's the best program for them. All right, if there's no questions on that, what I'm going to do is we have a couple minutes left. Again, just focus. All you got to focus on up front, just get the statements. Don't worry about having it, quote unquote, sold, like sign right here, because we can't really do that until we present something. So just focus on getting the statements, and then we'll tackle the last half of the sale after that. Any other questions? Anything else that you guys are kind of bottlenecking with that we can help you with, or anyone else on the call can help you with?
Chuck, this is Mark calling.
Hey, Mark. Good to have
I
you.
had a question for you. Chad helped me out in the end with it, but I lost one recently. It was I couldn't meet him. He obviously was in Florida, the customer, and it was everything was done over the phone. I did get the statements. Obviously, everything was fine. What I thought was excellent rapport with him, and he came back and told me that there was somebody I was going up against, another merchant processor, which is fine. I didn't give him the exact pricing. I gave him what around he would be, because I don't like giving out exactly what I'm doing, obviously. And he comes back and asks me after the third day of dealing with him and obviously he was dealing with somebody else. He comes back and asks me that the other person must have asked, and he says, how many basis points are you charging me? So at that point, I needed to say something else, and instead of telling him exactly what it was, I should have explained to him, well, there's certain criteria for your exact statement, or there's certain pricing that we use, to benefit you, and I gave him the basis points, and then I lost the deal.
Yeah,
and the basis points, it was just between me and you, the basis points were low. I mean, it was a $4 or $5 million a year account, but the basis points I'll just tell you, they were 10 basis points, so it was a low deal. But that person got it instead of me, and I'm like, obviously there was still a little bit of money in it, even if you go below 10, because it was $5 million, but it wasn't a lot. So I don't think I don't think he was telling her what I doubt that he was telling her that I gave him, but he seemed to be fair, but I'm not sure how I ended up losing it.
Yeah, there again, I mean, anytime you do business over the phone, I mean, and I know, I mean, I've done a lot of deals over the phone. And I've lost a ton. I probably lost more than I got over the phone. That's just the nature of the business, is that anytime you do it over the phone, you immediately are at a big disadvantage, especially if they're going head-to-head with someone else who's there. And you guys, what you'll find out, some of the new folks in this industry, there's people out there who, I mean, they just don't know how to make money in this business. And you got to make a living doing it. I mean, you got to generate revenue on the account. And and I guess in a deal like that, if you've got good rapport with the guy, one of the things I used to say with merchants is I go, look, lay it out. Lay it on me. Obviously you're asking me these questions. Look, it's not my first trip to the rodeo, okay? You're asking me these questions because you're obviously getting entertained by someone else too. I mean, I understand that. Let me ask you, what are they saying? If it's something that I can't do, I'll tell you, go that route. And, oftentimes what you have to do is you have to uncover what the other guy's pitching them, and then I got to know what the difference is. So
exactly.
Let's say,
that's where I made my mistake. I didn't get that information.
Right.
I know in the end they used something, obviously, and I'm not so positive. I never found out exactly if this person. I think she was in his area, so she might have been able to talk to him directly, but she might not have been. But you're right. There's something that was even though I was talking to him, he was very, he was friendly, and we talked a bunch of times. We were talking about the dogs that he had and all this kind of stuff. So the report was there. I didn't get that. I needed to dig deeper. I think that's where I made my mistake. After speaking with Chad and stuff like that, and who knows what she told him, she could have.
Sure.
You never know what they're telling you. But yes, I didn't dig deep enough. I think that's why I failed.
Right, and that really there's no harm, in my opinion, and I appreciate when people do this with me. I just go, look, lay it on me, man. What are you looking at? I mean, we can dance all day, or we can just cut to the chase. I mean, what do you want? And then once I find out what they're hearing and what I'm coming in with, and I know what the difference is. And for an example, I remember being out in the field and dealing with merchants, and I'd go head to head with somebody, and they'd go, well, this guy's coming in at 1.59, and you're telling me 1.79. And I go, okay, and I'm just using this hypothetical situation. I go, okay, really, given your volume, we're talking a difference of $10 a month. let me ask you, is it worth $10 a month to know that I'm there to serve, whatever, in this, I would use this based on all the rapport, all the knowledge that I was able to impart with them about this industry. And I go, look, I mean, I get that. I mean, is it worth $10 a month to know that whenever you need me, I'm there? I mean, it's like insurance. Let me ask you, Mark, do you drive? Mark,
Yes,
do you drive? Okay. Do you have a car? Do you have insurance on your car?
Yes, sir.
Do you plan on going out and wrecking your car today?
No, sir.
No. Well, why do you have insurance on it? Just in case, right?
Yep.
I mean, I hear you, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant. And you ever hear the old, what is that? How does that old expression go? There's no such thing as a what? A free what?
Free ride.
A free lunch, a free lunch, a free ride, right? I understand, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant. I understand what you're hearing. I get that. You and I both know, and look, I mean, obviously, you didn't build a $5 million a year operation because, I mean, obviously, you didn't build that just by luck. I mean, that took hard work. That took some understanding how things work. I mean, you have business savvy. It'd be like me coming into your business, and let's say you sold widgets that go for $300, and I said, well, I can go get that exact same widget over here for $75. What immediately are you going to think, Mr. Merchant? You're going to go, no, that's not the same widget. There's something wrong in that scenario. So I hear what you're saying. That deal sounds great, but knowing what I know about this industry and having done it for so long, or maybe if I'm new, I go, look, from what I understand, talking to my underwriters, that'd be like the widget scenario. You and I both know there's no such thing as a free ride. I mean, this is the kind of the tone of the conversation I need to have with the guy. Is I need to go, look, you and I both know, look, you didn't build a $5 million a year operation because you just fell, because you fell for everything, because you wouldn't build it if you did. And because when I find the difference, I have to establish that the value I bring is higher than that difference in cost each month. And then if I can't establish that, what I need to establish is that, I mean, does it sound realistic? I mean, just think about that. And we've all heard things like that. Does it sound realistic that you can go out and you hear deals all the time? You go, oh man, you can buy this new M5 BMW for $38,000. It's brand new, 0 miles, and you go, that's a $100,000 car. There's no way. And then you get in there and you go, oh, I see. It's like the kid at the Christmas Story when he gets the secret decoder ring and the only secret message is drink more Ovaltine. Really? I was just robbed. Understand. So you got to kind of have that level of conversation with them, I think, and go, look, you and I both know, man. I mean, number one, you're talking on $5 million worth of revenue. You're talking about $18 a month. I mean, really, $18 a month? Isn't it worth it? I mean, every time you call me, I'm responsive. I've been able to do these things, and I revisit the life up to this point. I've done all these things like you said, right? Let me ask you, you want to do business with people that do exactly what they tell you they're going to do, right? Yep. Have I or haven't I? I mean, everything you've wanted I've come through with, right? So you have to kind of pitch that.
It's really, can I jump in and point at something there? This is John Eliason. Yeah. You notice that Chuck's not just saying, oh, send it over and I'll beat whatever he's got. He's fighting tooth and nail for margin. And over the course of a handful of accounts, over the course of however many 100 accounts you want to bring on, this makes a dramatic difference in your income. And it also shows to whomever your merchant, whatever you call the person that you're selling, your target, your client, whatever, that you're actually good at what you do, as opposed to somebody that just sells on price. I don't know about you, but I've got no respect for people who just sell on price. But I would have respect for somebody who understands their craft. Because like Chuck was saying, I revisit the history. Look, every time I've been here, I mean, you probably want to do business with people like that, don't you? I know I do personally in life. Man, I'd rather pay a little bit more for somebody who I trust is going to be alert and on the ball with my business.
Well, and I appreciate that input because that's exactly right. I mean, I always, and John and I have always, we've always worked it that way. You know, and I figured that if I made $2 more a month per merchant than the next guy, multiply that over 1,000 accounts. What does that mean? That's 24 grand difference a year. I mean, that's an unreal difference. And you know what? Merchants that are really, especially a guy that size, he's going to understand that, because here's the harsh realities of it all. And I've said these words to a merchant. I go, look, yeah, I mean, let me ask you, do you want someone who's handling this side of your business? I would imagine that you want them to have a vested interest in your account, right? You want them making money. Because if they're not making money on your account, what are the odds that they're going to be there to help you when your needs change 6 months from now? Or when your needs change a year from now? If they're not making money, what do you think is going to happen? You guys ever deal with the customer in this job or this career, this path, whatever you're doing, or anything else that you've ever done that, you know, that you know that every time you deal with them, there's no money in it? What's your mental attitude towards them?
Next.
You go, look, man, hey, you know what? I'd love to have your processing volume, but you know what, quite frankly, for what you want me to do it for, there's no money in it. You know, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're selling cars, if you're selling flooring, you go, yeah, look, I know you could buy a bazillion square feet of carpeting, but you know what? There's no money in it for me, so I don't even want to go through the man hours or the thought process. Look, I can't help you. It's no different in our industry. And when you relate that to a merchant and you set it up right and you go, look, let me ask you, have you ever had a customer that you know every time they call, there's no money in this transaction? What's your mental attitude towards that customer? And they go, well, you know, and they'll tell you because they'll know. They've all had them. And you don't build a $5 million a year deal in credit card volume without having customers like that along the way. You go, you know what, I just finally tell them to go somewhere else to get their business. I go, exactly. So understand, yeah, you're right. Do I generate a little more revenue? How I'm pricing it? Absolutely. But you want me there, right? If your needs change down the road, do you want me selling vacuum cleaners, or do you want someone who's there who knows exactly what you need? What would you want? Because what's it going to feel like when you guys ever break down in your car in the middle of the night somewhere and there's really nothing you can do? You know that lost feeling that you feel? You ever had money lost in a bank transaction and you're going, holy cow, I need that to do something, and you feel like there's no one that can help you? Have you ever felt helpless? Because that's exactly how you're going to feel when you have an issue down the road, because, you know, when you do business, issues come up. It's exactly how you're going to feel when you call your sales rep who doesn't make any money, so they had to go off to another profession, and you can't get any help. What does that cost you then? What does it cost you to track down your $10,000? What does that cost? Not only in man hours, but heartache in life. Do those things make sense?
Yeah, basically, Chuck, you created more value, really. I mean, it wasn't just based on, like I said, the sale. Even though I gained rapport, I didn't really, I don't know, I guess there was no value to me talking. I didn't give him any value besides price, I guess. So that's why I blew it. I mean, he did have my history because I sent him over some documents and some testimonial letters, and
sure.
I did explain, you know, how long I've been in the business, and that, you know,
I did
explain that. So I did, but not. I didn't. It was in an email. It wasn't being told to him, and I didn't break it down that way. But you know, I learned a lesson from it. Anyways, there's definitely I learned a lesson. You know.
Well, good, and I'm glad you brought it, because you know that's kind of that. You know what you brought up there in the conversation that I think that transpired after that are things that no one ever shares with anyone. They're things that only somebody who's really in the trenches and really fighting it out and really going to score every freaking deal they can get their hands on can truly understand. In the helpless one, always works. I mean, I would say 90% of the time you go, how are you going to feel? Have you ever felt helpless? How did that feel right there? When you felt like you couldn't, and you know what the sad thing is, guys? Here's understand how the world works. And not that I know all the answers, don't get me wrong, but what I do know is you ever see like on your bill where like they overcharge you like $3 for something and you go, okay, I can spend $300 in time trying to fight this $3 or I can just pay it. You ever see that?
Mhm.
Happens every day. People just go, screw it. And people know this. People know that, I can sneak that in because he can't afford to fight me on it. So is that the kind of person you want to do business with, or do you want something that's straight? What do you want?
Yeah.
So anyway,
Hey
great
guys.
question. Hey,
Sorry.
you have a question?
Hi. My name is Sneha. I'm from New Jersey.
Hey, Meha from New Jersey.
Right now, I've been working with this particular merchant, and there's actually 2 owners to this store. And I've been coming pretty far with them, but unfortunately, one of the owners was more concerned with getting the numbers up front and consistently kept checking on his current plan. And they go in and out of the store, and I frequent the store, so I go down there, I talk to the owners on a daily basis, even before this happened. And basically I hit a roadblock as soon as he brought up that he's more worried about his cancellation fees with his current merchant service provider than he is at looking at any other one. And it made it very difficult to try to get any information out of them. And I actually had to know it.
You haven't gotten
in this week. Yeah, I went in this weekend and I actually talked to the hesitant owner, and I was like, look, the first half is non-committal. All we do is diagnose what's going on. If we honestly cannot find a value for you that is worth that fee, then that's fine. But at least let us take a look, And
right.
he agreed to do it now. But what I'm worried about is a lot of the other stores that I have an in with, because they're all within the same industry, have the same sort of format where they have 2 owners and one deals with most of the numbers and one deals with the customer. And I'm worried that if I continue with these stores in this industry, I'm going to hit the same roadblock each time, and it really slowed down momentum.
Well, you know what? Here's the deal. Okay, I got it. I think I got it. And correct me if I'm wrong when I give you my rebuttal to that. The first thing I want you to do, and I'm just sharing with you what I've seen work in having written a ton of business and helped a ton of business. The very first thing that we all have to remember is always put everything in a question format. And what I mean by that, I go, you know what, I understand your concern. Absolutely. I understand the concern, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant. Cancellation fees are things that we deal with, and we're very adept to deal with them. But let me ask you, I'm sure that if it made dollars and cents to put more money back into your business, it would help you, right? You got to get some sort of tie down in there. Look, I understand your concern, but you know what? This is what we do. Our job is to deal with this for you. Why don't we do this? And this is a big one. Why don't we do this? I probably say 300 times a day. I say it with the people on our staff. I say it with advisors. I say it with agent directors. I say it with people that I do business with personally. I go, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we at least look at what you have? Because I would imagine, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant, before you make an investment decision on things that you're going to commit yourself to financially, you want to know the numbers, don't you? Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So before we make a financial decision, why don't we do this? Why don't we look at the numbers? We'll lay the program out, and let's see what makes sense for you guys. Because you know what? I've been a customer for years, for however long, and you're going to see me anyway. So if the timing doesn't make sense today, it doesn't mean the timing won't make sense 6 months, 12 months from now. So why don't we do this? Why don't we look at it now? Let's see where we're at, then we can move forward. Then we can make a good, educated decision. If I said, Miha, hey, I'm going to sell you a car. I'll sell you a car for I'll sell you a car for $30,000. Would you buy it? What would be the first question if I said that to you? What would be the first question?
To be honest, it's the interest rate.
Well, you'd probably go, what kind of car is it?
Yeah.
Because if I told you I was selling you a Lamborghini for $30,000 brand new because I just needed to take a loss on something, you might be all over it. But if I told you I was selling you a 1976 Opel, you'd go, hell no, I'm not paying 30 grand for that thing, right? So
Right.
before you make so that's the language that a merchant will understand. Go, look, I understand. And the first thing I always like to say is go, you know what? I understand how you feel. Feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel, Mr. Merchant, because you know what? I'm the same way. Before I make financial decisions, I want all the data, right? I'm sure you'd want to know all the answers before you make a decision on something, wouldn't you? Yes, I would. Well, what I found is 80% of the time, it still makes sense to move forward now. So why don't we do this? Why don't we look at your statements? Let's at least see where we're at, and then we can make an educated decision instead of just guessing. Make sense?
All right. Yep, that makes sense. It makes it going to make it a lot easier to approach these stores. Now, I do have one more question, though.
All right.
It does have this partner format. Should I push for all the meetings to include every partner in the business, or should I just agree to a meeting with one partner? Because that's also been an issue where one person wants to meet, and I would assume that they would catch each other up, but the next time I see someone else.
Yeah, never assume. You know what they say about assuming. So the first thing I want to do is I don't care who gives me the statements. I could care less who gives me the statements. But when I get the statements, I go, oh, let me ask you, when you guys do this on the paperwork, who's going to be on the paperwork? Right. So it's two of you, so you're both on the paperwork then? Okay, great. Then I put that in my mental banks. And then I go and I get the numbers together, and then I call the one back that I got the rapport and the relationship with, and then I says, hey, look, I got really phenomenal news for you guys. Let me ask you, when can I get together with the both of you? And you know what they're going to say right away? Just give me the numbers.
Yeah.
And go, you know what? You know what I'd love to do? I understand where you're coming from, but why don't we do this? My God, there it is again. Why don't we? I can't get away from it. It's like it's ingrained. Why don't we do this? Why don't we set a time? Because you know how it is, the old telephone game. You know, your partner may have different questions than you have.
Yeah.
Because, you know, not all business partners think the same way, do they? They might have a core thing they think the same way about, but a lot of other things they don't. That your partner may have questions that you never thought of. And you know what? And I know you're so busy, and I don't want to waste your guys' time, and I just want to help you be as effective and as efficient as possible. Let me ask you, can we all three get together at noon today, or is 3 o'clock better for you guys?
All right, that makes sense.
Okay, great questions. Any other questions before we go? No? Awesome. Remember, get the statements. Just get those statements. Just do what you can to get the statements. Get them in with the statement or with the merchant tune-up sheet. Get those things in, and we can create some magic for you. So that's your number one focus is just get those dang statements in, and we'll put things together that'll make you guys look really, really good when you go back to your customers. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time today, and I will see you all next week.